Hello, my beautiful friends. Welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you are new here. My name is Kimmy, and I talk about true crime here on YouTube, and I tend to go for the lesser-known cases just because I feel like so many of the big cases, so many people have already covered, so it's kind of like, what can I add to it? So, if you like true crime, if you like learning about the lesser-known cases, please feel free to subscribe, and I would love to have you here. So, today we are going to be talking about Philip Markoff, who is known as the Craigslist Killer. And if you've never heard of the Craigslist Killer, it was really, really big whenever I was in high school, like my senior year. So, it's kind of one of the cases that really got me more into true crime, along with a few other cases that I have planned to do videos on. But, without further ado, let's jump right on into the video. So, Philip Markoff was born February 12th, 1986 in Sherrill, New York. Yeah, Sherrill, New York. And he was born to Richard and Susan Markoff. And they actually had one other child together who was a son named Jonathan, and he's older than Philip. And then they ended up getting a divorce, and Susan remarried to a banker named Gary Carroll, and they had one daughter together in 1991 named Haley Carroll. When Richard and Susan divorced, Jonathan actually ended up moving in with his dad in Syracuse, New York. Syracuse? I can't say that word. Syracuse, New York, and Philip moved with his mom. He attended Vernon Verona Sherrill High School, and which is a public school in Verona, New York, which is about an hour and a half, an hour away from Brooklyn. And his hometown of Sherrill is a small town with a population of about 3,150 people. And whenever you go to Sherrill, they actually brag about the fact that they're the smallest town in New York. So it's kind of one of those towns where you imagine it's one of those towns where everyone knows everyone, with it being such a small population. At his high school in New York, he participated in youth club, history club. He was a member of the National Honor Society, and he was on the bowling team. He was known to be very smart. And the friends of his family talked about how the Markoff family was a very quiet one. They kind of kept to themselves a lot, but even despite that, Philip was very well liked. And Philip's teacher, actually said that he was just the nicest young man, that he was polite, he was respectful, and that he had a good sense of humor. And he was about 6'3", and he had very broad shoulders, and he really liked to play golf. He was more interested in computers and science than he was girls or any kind of contact sports. So he tended to go for bowling and golf rather than football. After graduating, Philip attended SUNY Albany, which is the State University of New York at Albany. He was a pre-med student, and he was majoring in biology, and he took a crap ton of advanced placement courses, so he was actually able to graduate in just under 3 years. Now, he was in a co-ed fraternity, it was for pre-med students, and it was called Phi Delta Epsilon. I don't know if I'm saying that right. But his friends all said that he wasn't really comfortable in his own skin, and that he was kind of pretending to be someone that he wasn't. I guess, to try and fit in, as a lot of young people tend to do, especially in high school and college. Now, Philip had a lab partner at Boston University, which is where he got accepted into medical school, and her name was Tiffany Montgomery. And she said that you kind of never really knew what you were going to get with Phil, which was his nickname. She said that he wouldn't look at you whenever he talked to you, and he often seemed really tired and depressed. According to Tiffany, she said that there was one party that they went to where he tried to flirt with girls, but he would often go for girls that just clearly weren't interested in him, but he never could quite take the hint that they didn't want anything to do with him. She said he couldn't read body language, and they never really outright told him, so he just kind of kept going with it, and we've all known a guy like that. So, eventually Philip did meet one girl, and her name was McAllister. He met her at a hospital where he volunteered, and that she was a a pre-med student, and she was this real pretty strawberry blonde senior. And she was actually the one that asked him out first, and he said yes, and they ended up dating. And after he graduated from SUNY, S-U-N-Y, they ended up moving to Boston together because Philip had gotten, like I said, into Boston University, the Boston Medical School. And then Megan had gotten accepted into St. Kitts, I think it's called, which is a medical school in the Caribbean. However, her plans were put on hold to go to St. Kitts because Philip had proposed to her on May 17th, 2008, and she accepted, and they had set a wedding date for August 14th, 2009. Now, in 2009, Megan was actually stuck at home. In April of 2009, I'm sorry. Megan was stuck at home with a hurt back, and while she was taking care of her hurt back, she was planning her wedding. But Philip was not there with her. Instead, we will learn what Philip was out doing while she was at home taking care of herself and planning their wedding. So on April 10th, 2009, Philip had actually responded to an ad posted by Trisha Leffler on Craigslist for erotic services. She was staying at the Westin Copley place. I don't quite know how to say it. I think it's Copley. And it was a real upscale hotel in downtown Boston. He had responded to her email, and they set up a date, and then he went up to her room, and she greeted him and let him inside of her room. And as soon as he entered, he pointed a gun at her and ordered her to lie down on the ground on her stomach, and he tied her up with plastic zip ties. He then proceeded to go through her personal belongings. He went through her suitcase, and he stole $800 as well as her credit cards. Then he took her cell phone. He put on plastic gloves. He took her cell phone, and he erased his number from her phone. But weirdly enough, he didn't do anything. I mean, that's not the right word, weirdly, but thankfully he didn't do anything to her sexually. He took off his gloves and gagged her with duct tape, and then he cut the phone lines in the hotel so that way she couldn't call for help. And then he took a pair of her panties, so that's kind of why it's weird to me that he didn't do anything to her, which, I'm glad that he didn't. But anyway, the whole ordeal lasted more than 15 minutes. So then 4 days later, on April 14th, Philip met up with another woman named Julissa Brisman, and he told her that his name was Andy, and she went by Morgan on Craigslist, which is where she was offering erotic services as well. They had never spoken face-to-face or on the phone. They communicated exclusively through email and text message, which is how they communicated how they decided when and where they were going to meet up. Julissa's friend, so Philip used a disposable track phone, and Julissa's friend is the one who actually pretended to be Morgan, which was Julissa's, I guess, her stage name. I don't know if that's the right word, but I guess her friend was kind of I don't want to say her manager. I don't think that's the right word, but pretty much who would book all of her appointments and stuff for her. She was listed as a masseuse on Craigslist, and Philip had emailed her on the 13th. And she told him that she was visiting Boston for 3 days and had a room on the 13th floor. And she was actually staying she was staying on the 20th floor of the Boston Marriott Copley Place. So again, I guess these hotels are all in the same area since they're all in Copley Place. Philip had used the email amdpm@live.com, which is, I think, a subsidiary of, how Yahoo has, Ymail. I guess it's, with Hotmail. He used that email to answer the anonymous address provided by Craigslist, and her reply came back as massages by Morgan Boston at yahoo.com. At 4:37 p.m., Philip wrote, I myself am visiting Boston and was looking for a 10 p.m. or later appointment tonight or tomorrow. Unfortunately, I will not be free any earlier. Julissa, who also worked part-time at a tanning salon in New York, had replied to him and said, my Wednesday appointment moved later, so I can do it tomorrow night. We could do it at 10:30 or 11 tonight. If you wanted to see me later tonight, just let me know what you prefer. Morgan. At 7:03 p.m., Philip replied, Hey Morgan, 10 p.m. tomorrow is best for me. Thank you, Andy. Because he was going by Andy, remember? The next night, April 14, 2009, Philip had sent a text saying he used his track phone to tell Julissa that he had arrived early. He'd gotten there around 9:41 p.m. and Julissa had sent him a text back saying not to come up until 10 p.m. And he was prompt. He was there at 10 p.m. Again, shortly after he entered her hotel room, she was found unconscious with multiple gunshot wounds, and she died later from her injuries at Boston Medical Center. So police say what had happened was that as soon as Philip had entered the room, a confrontation had occurred. So I assume what probably happened was, he went into the room, he tried to rob her, do the same thing that he did to Trisha, but Julissa fought back, and he didn't like that. So, he told her to get on the ground. She fought back when he threatened her. He tried to rob her, and she tried to resist, but she was only 5'5", 105 pounds. He was a lot bigger than her, so he easily overpowered her. He hit her in the skull with a 9mm semi-automatic pistol, and then shot her 3 times at close range. Once in the chest, once in the heart, and once in the abdomen. A woman in one of the nearby hotel rooms actually heard the screams, and she went into the hallway where she saw a fully clothed Julissa sprawled across the doorway of her room. She had a piece of a plastic tie, like a plastic zip tie, the same kind he used on Trisha, around one of her wrists. So, it sounds to me like since she was found, sprawled in the doorway, that maybe what had happened was after he shot her, she still tried to go to the doorway to try and get help. Video surveillance had caught Philip leaving her room, but he had a cap on and he couldn't, really be seen. They couldn't see his face, so they didn't catch him, even though they had him on surveillance. Tragically, Julissa was killed just 10 days before her 26th birthday and 2 weeks before completing a year's course in addiction counseling at City College of New York. And at her funeral, a young woman pushing a 6-month-old baby in a stroller said Julissa had saved her and her baby's life. So 2 days later, on April 16th, Philip found Cynthia Melton, who was a stripper, and she was advertising lap dances on the erotic services on Craigslist. So using his track phone, Philip set up an 11 p.m. meeting at the Warwick Holiday Inn Express in Warwick, Rhode Island. So this is new. Now he's in Rhode Island. Again, same thing. Once he was in the room, he pulls out the gun, same song and dance, ties her up using a zip tie. But this time, he tried to stick a ball gag in her mouth, and she resisted. So eventually, he just gave up, didn't gag her, and then went through her stuff. Then he told her, "Don't worry, I'm not going to kill you. Just give me the money." But Philip didn't count on the fact that there was going to be a knock on the door, which was her husband. So, as he's telling her this, he hears the knock on the door, which turns out to be Cynthia's husband, Keith. And Keith had started to walk backward down the hall, tripped over, and then Philip ended up just hauling it out of the room and ran down a stairwell. Now, while all this is going on, his fiancée Megan was home in New Jersey planning their wedding, so she has no idea any of this is going on. She said she had spoken to Philip every single night, and eventually she went back to Boston, like right after he had committed his last crime against Cynthia. Now, on April 22nd, 2009, 2 days after Philip was arrested, it was discovered that Philip's Boston phone number had been used. It was tied to an undated Craigslist posting for an ebony erotic masseuse. The posting read, Craigslist ebony erotic masseuse taking my last appointment. 24, why get a massage if you're going to be uncomfortable? I'm sure I will leave you satisfied. My donation is $150. Contact me at 617-481, and then the rest of Philip's number. It's believed that there's a few reasons that this was posted. They thought either Philip was trying to lure men to come to him so he could rob them. 2, he did it to lure people to a hotel so he could rob them. Or 3, it was just a typo posted by an actual erotic masseuse looking for clients. Personally, I think it's the second one. I think he was trying to lure people to a hotel so that way he could rob them, given his history. But that's just my opinion, disclaimer. So, Philip was arrested on April 20th, 2009 for the murder of Julissa. He was driving on Interstate 95 with Megan in Walpole, Massachusetts, which is about an hour away from Salem. They were going to Foxwoods Resort, which was a casino in Connecticut, and it's about an hour and 20 minutes away from Massachusetts, Walpole, Massachusetts. Police saw him leave his apartment with Megan, and he was carrying a suitcase, and they were like, oh, this guy's gonna go try and leave the state. Let's go ahead and arrest him. So that's what they did. So police drew their guns and told him, get out of the vehicle. He was under arrest, and then they cuffed him, told him he was being arrested for murder. And Megan, who had no idea about any of this, was taking in everything that was happening, and she's like, no, you have the wrong guy. You've made a mistake. So they were questioned separately, and when Philip was questioned, he wasn't giving away anything. He asked about his Miranda rights, but he didn't give up any information about anything. So he was pretty much just quiet the whole time, and the questions that he did answer, he was really evasive about it. Megan, on the other hand, was much more forthcoming. The police said that she was chatty, that she was cooperative, and basically she told the cops that Philip didn't have many friends, and that they didn't really have any money to go out, so a lot of the time they were just really at home. But she did tell detectives that they would go to Foxwoods, that place that they were going, because Philip liked to play blackjack, but that he wasn't really a heavy gambler. During his crime spree, Megan said that he called her every single night. When they showed the footage and how he looked like the suspect that they were looking for, she still defended him, and they asked her if she was scared to go home with him, if she felt safe to go home with him, and she basically told them that she wasn't scared to go home with him and that she felt safe. So while they were both being interviewed, police actually went to their apartment, combing through it to try and find evidence, and evidence did they find. So they found the gun that police thought was used to kill Julissa, and it was hidden in a hollowed out copy of a medical book called Gray's Anatomy. They found the bullets that matched those used to kill Brisman. They found the same plastic ties used in all 3 crimes. 4 pairs of women's panties were stuffed up into a pair of socks hidden in the box spring of their bed. They found track phones and a laptop computer with pieces of Andy's response to Brisman's Craigslist posting, and they found 45 $100 bills. At the time of his arrest, this is what kills me. At the time of his arrest, Philip was wearing the same brown leather shoes that was splattered with the blood of Julissa. So he was literally wearing the shoes that he... I mean, I guess to be fair, he couldn't have predicted that he was going to get arrested, but I'm not laughing because I think it's funny. It's just, how do you have the balls to just... Anyway. They also found Philip's fingerprints on purchasing documents for the gun he had brought with a stolen driver's license. His fingerprints were also lifted from the duct tape he had used to bind Trisha's mouth and were found in the hotel room on the wall where he assaulted Cynthia. On top of that, Trisha had also picked out his picture from a photo lineup. So they had all this evidence, and one of the victims had picked him out from a lineup. Philip, who had never been in trouble before and graduated summa cum laude from the State University of New York at Albany. He was arraigned the next day, not arranged. After the litany of his alleged crimes were read aloud, Philip still pled not guilty. No one from his family was there during his arraignment. Shortly after entering his plea of not guilty on April 21st, 2009, Philip was moved to the Nashua Street Jail. There, he removed the leather strips from his boat shoes and tried to hang himself from the bars of the cell. He was transferred to the infirmary before he could, and he was placed on suicide watch. A psychiatric who had seen him decided against sending him to a state mental hospital. If I could interject for a minute and just throw out my opinion on here. Again, this is just my opinion. Don't come for me. I don't think he actually at that time was suicidal. I really think he was trying to set up a precedent to fall under the plea of not guilty by reason of insanity. But that's just my opinion, and I don't mean any kind of like disrespect. Well, I don't mean anything by it, but that's my opinion. So, around this time, Megan's father told reporters outside of his house in Little Silver, which was a borough in Monmouth County, New Jersey, that his daughter was not doing well and that things were very tense. Megan McAllister, during this time, had actually emailed People magazine to tell them that she had supported Philip during this time. The exact email said, "Philip is a beautiful man inside and out and did not commit this crime. Unfortunately, someone else did and needs to be penalized. Philip was set up." She sent a similar email to ABC News that said, "A police officer in Boston, or many, is trying to make big bucks by selling this false story to the TV stations. What else is new? Philip is an intelligent man who is just trying to live his life. So if you could leave us alone, we would greatly appreciate it. We expect to marry in August and share a wonderful, meaningful life together." Not long after that, on April 29th, Megan went to the jail that Philip was being held at and to visit. She went with her mother to visit Philip in jail for 25 minutes. It was later confirmed that during this time, she had broken up with him, and he, again, tried to commit suicide the following day by raking a serrated spoon over his wrist. Yikes. On August 15th, 2010, 1 year and 1 day after his wedding was supposed to take place, he was found dead by an apparent suicide. He had made a knife from a jail-issued pen and a piece of metal, and he used it to slash major arteries in his ankles, legs, and neck. He used plastic bags to catch the flowing blood and swallowed toilet paper so that way he couldn't be resuscitated. He then put a plastic bag over his head that he tightened with gauze and then covered himself with a blanket on the bed and just waited. After making a number of cell checks and seeing that he hadn't moved, the deputy officer decided to make a health and welfare check. When they pulled back the sheets, it was just, it was bloody. It was not a pretty scene. They called it a bloodbath. Philip didn't leave a suicide note, but he did spread out photos of Megan on the little table that was in his jail cell, and using his own blood, he wrote her name above the doorway to his cell, and so that way he could see it. The officers weren't able to see it, because it was above his cell, so he could see it, but from the outside, no one else could see it. He also wrote the word pocket, which it was later learned that pocket was a term of endearment that he and Megan used for each other. Even after Megan ended their engagement, apparently she and Philip still corresponded, so I don't know what to think about that. But that is the story of the Craigslist killer, Philip Markoff, and this guy was just, I don't want to say he's the worst, because there's definitely been awful worse people than him, but he was still bad. And I don't know what to think about Megan. On one hand, I understand wanting to stand by your man, I guess, but at the same time, when you have that much evidence, I don't understand how you can sit there and say, oh, he didn't do it. But that's my opinion. So, Thank you for watching, and let me know your thoughts about this case down in the comments below, and I'll see you next time. Bye!